Greetings everybody, Johnsar here, and I'm sharing a pretty overpowered build that I have been really enjoying using in the Foundry update for Dead Cells, and I'm calling this the Double Bow build. It focuses heavy on tactics, and I guess this is a build for those of you that are struggling getting through all the way to the end to the Assassin. And it focuses heavily on using tactics, not brutality and melee weapons. This is all about using the ranged weapons and just getting your kills from far, far away. So I'm going to show the full run, and I'm going to talk about my strategies, my routes, the weapons I like to choose, and where you might need a little bit of luck to actually get this build to work. So this is a fairly, I don't want to say weak build, but by the third stage, you're going to need a little bit of luck just to get the weapons that you need. I mean, you can get the weapons you need early on, but you need to have a decent ranged weapon by the third stage. And, you know, with the re-rolling merchant mechanic, I forget the exact name, it makes it much more likely. So if you're at a stage, you know, I started this with 15,000 gold, so I have the banker mechanic. I forget what that one exactly is called as well, but if you have that and you're saving a lot of money, it's not too hard because you can re-roll what equipment you get at any merchant anyway. So the idea is, for this build, you need a primary weapon, a ranged weapon that can do a lot of damage. My favorites in order of favorites is the lightning bolt. Is by far the best weapon. That's what I end up using at the very end of this to get through the assassin, the final boss. The hunter's longbow is also a fantastic weapon, but it does not do as much DPS against bosses as the lightning bolt. But the hunter's longbow, I think, is actually better for exploring the levels, the biomes, and killing, you know, individual enemies that are not elite enemies and are not bosses from range. The double-notched bow, the heavy crossbow, and the infantry bow are also great options as well for your primary weapon. And I guess I should say that in the first biome, the first level here, the prisoner's cells, that the lightning bolt and the hunter's crossbow, and then I guess the infantry bow and the heavy crossbow. Yeah, you know what? They're all good enough to use in the first or second level if you get them. They're not as strong as they get later on. You're gonna need probably, I'd say, 5 points in tactics to make them really viable. Yeah. Anyway. And then the explosive crossbow, I'm not a huge fan of. It fires really slow, and it does that AoE, but I prefer any one of the other bows over the hunter's crossbow. Hoku's bow, very specific use case for that one. That is the bow that when you fire it, it marks the enemy so that they take additional damage further on. So that's your primary weapon. Hoku's bow is not a primary weapon. The secondary weapon that you're going to want to find is the ice bow. And if you can get one that has pierce on it, even better. Ice blast is also very good as well. For the mutations, which I'll talk about now because we just went past the mutations, I think I have them all unlocked. You're going to be focusing on the tactic side of the mutations, the ones that give the there's 3 primary ones, or there's only 3 rather, for the tactics that focus on and scale their effectiveness with the tactics. Reduced skill cooldown, and which might seem a little bit counterintuitive because we're focusing, we're still doing most of our damage with the primary weapon, but because the bows actually scale with tactics and not brutality, red, we're going to be focusing on the on the tactics mutations. The one that gives the reduced cooldown, because you'll be throwing a lot of ice grenades and you'll be throwing a lot of bear traps or regular grenades or any other skill. You also, there is a skill, or I'm sorry, a mutation that gives bonus damage. Oh, there we go. I got my ice bow. I'm pretty sure that I end up using this level 2 ice bow for the entire run. That's how effective this build can actually be. Okay, so the mutations. The second mutation you want to get is the one that gives bonus damage when you are far away from enemies, when there are no enemies in range. And that's because with the lightning bolts and the hunter's longbow, it is very easy to hit your enemies when you are outside of that range. And if you didn't know this, there will actually be a little sword above your character's head that indicates that, okay, you are in fact far enough away from enemies that you're getting that bonus damage to proc and kill them even faster. And then that mutation combined with a hunter's longbow perk that does crit damage when you are in fact far enough away from enemies, it's just remarkably effective. And I believe they proc at the same distance as well, so it's actually kind of doubly helpful to have that little sword above your head telling you, oh, I'm far enough away from enemies that I'm getting all of this extra bonus damage. And you're just getting, especially with the hunter's longbow, you're going to be one-shotting basically any enemy in the game by the end of the game, if not two-shotting. And then the third perk, I would get a, if you can, now this is where, okay, the third mutation, you're going to want to get the one that gives you bonus damage when you are near a deployed skill. And a deployed skill, those are only traps. So things like the death orb does not make you actually get bonus damage. Things like the magnetic grenade, that doesn't work for it. And you'll actually know because, or when it's actually working, because your character will have the little sword above his head with the number 2 next to it if you are far enough away from the enemies and you are close enough to your deployed skill that you're getting double bonus damage. So those are the mutations that you want. You get one mutation for every level up to 3 that you do, and those really, I mean, it's so easy to get those early on. You can do them whatever order you want. I prefer to go first with the reduced cooldown, just because it cuts the cooldown in half and it just makes those skills so much more effective. Okay, so for preferred skills later on, now let's assume that you have an ice bow with Pierce early on. Well, not necessarily early on, but that you just get it sometime during your run. I prefer the bear trap. The bear trap, I think, is the best skill for this build because it does in fact proc that mutation for bonus damage when you're near a deployed skill, and it holds bosses and elites in place. Bosses and elites are going to be the things that cause you the most headache if you are using the lightning bolt. And it's a weird trade-off. Like the hunter's longbow is fantastic against bosses and elites if you do not have like, let's say, the vine grenade or the bear trap. The ice grenade and ice blast, which is not a skill, but they're both very good, but I still prefer the ice bow over both of those, or even the ice crossbow, which I think I unlock at the end of this run. Just because the ice bow fires so incredibly fast, and then with Pierce, it's just, even at level 2, you're not using it for the damage. You're using it for the for the slowing effects on it. And it's just such an effective weapon that you can carry with you the whole game, that the ice grenades are nice, but you probably, like, it's better to use something that gives you a little bit more damage. Oh my god. Are these challenge runes or rooms like so unbelievably hard for anybody else? Like, I probably rushed through them way too much, but I'd say on average I get 5 enemies into it before I actually get a kill, or I'm sorry, before I get knocked out. Like, I am unbelievably bad at these. Like, they reset the achievements, and I've completed a couple of these, but not since they added the achievement for it, or since they fixed the achievement working for it. And I am terrible at them. Like, more often than not, well, I never skip them. I always try them, but, like, holy crap, I am bad at them. Which I guess kind of leads into my next, the next thing I wanted to talk about: strategy for curses when you're going through your first time and trying to get that first boss rune and trying to kill the assassin who is the final boss for the first time. I skip all curses. I don't do cursed treasure chests for the most part. I never break down doors. I'm just terrible at it. Like, I don't know if it's just my play style. Like, and I'm using a ranged build here, but like the enemies, it just seems like I'm just not good at dealing with curses. I'd say 9 times out of 10, I tell myself that I'm going to follow this strategy, no curses whatsoever, but that ends up being what kills me. Not taking too much damage and running out of potions, but a fucking curse that kills me in one hit. So I try to avoid them as much as humanly possible. So for the route that I prefer to take, technically the best route is probably prisoner cells first. Obviously, you don't have a choice. Then Promenade of the Condemned, where I am right now. I hate going the toxic sewers. They're just so... That is such an unbelievably difficult area early on in the game. Like, the enemies that are in there, they just... those fucking worms that drop all the grenades, like, they kill me. They absolutely kill me. And then the scorpions, like, they just take so much damage, and they're very difficult to kill, especially when you're doing this build early on in the game. It's a very, very difficult area. So yeah, I prefer to go Promenade of Condemned, and then, technically, if you want the strongest build possible, you should go to the Prison Depths third, and then the Ossuary, the Ossuary fourth, just because it provides you the most opportunities to level up. But I've found that the Ossuary, it's pretty challenging with this build early on, and especially if you're not getting the breaks that you need in terms of equipment. I've had a lot of runs end there, so I prefer to go to the Ramparts and then straight to the Watcher, and then after clearing out the Ramparts here, if I don't have the build that I want, spending all the gold that I've accumulated at this point, re-rolling at the gift shops to get the weapons and the perks and all that kind of stuff that I need to make it work. And then from there, after the Black Bridge, I usually go to the Slumbering Sanctuary. I think I just find that level really fun. I don't know why I like that level so much. Maybe because it's one of the newer levels. And then after that, the Clock Tower, the Forgotten Sepulchre. I don't know how to say that word. Miserably difficult. So easy to completely fuck up and just not... and just like, and plus the fact that like the easiest way to get through the Forgotten Sepulchre is to buy that nightlight that's at the beginning of it, or flashlight, whatever it's called, which means that you're gonna have to trade off one of your skills for the rest of it, which I don't like to do. I mean, you obviously don't have to sell it, and you can use it, or you can go back after getting to the end, swap it out, and then bring it back to the final boss. But even then, I just don't like it. The lightning bolt. Aha, here we go. The lightning bolt, it doesn't really make it clear with the description how crit damage works on it, but it does make it clear that, oh, you can screw this weapon up and hurt yourself in the process. Don't worry so much about hurting yourself. You take very little damage, especially when you don't have any of the boss runes activated. And always avoid anything that makes you take double damage for giving extra damage, that kind of stuff. Those screw me so much. Like, this is a very glass cannon build, and it does not bode well for anything where you're gonna end your run for taking damage. So just avoid that stuff. So it does critical damage after holding down the attack for an extra 2 to 3. Like, I think you can hold it down for about 4 seconds, I would guess, before using the attack actually hurts yourself. And about halfway through that time is when every tick actually does crit damage to them. So it's incredibly effective against bosses because you're doing crit damage for like multiple ticks in a row. In the second half of it, you're keeping your damage, and then you're keeping your range, and then when you have the bear trap to trap an elite or to trap a boss in their place, there's really no way that the boss can escape. I mean, even with the ice bow, like, they'll be slowed, they'll be trapped, and you're just destroying them from range. It's an unbelievably effective combo. What else did I want to talk about? I talked about curse rooms, I talked about curse chests, and all that kind of stuff. Sprinting to the boss and doing, and getting those timed doors. I find, that's a strategy that I think that's really up to you. On this particular run, I decided to go slow and kill everybody, but I've had plenty of successful runs where I just ran through as quickly as possible to and then got those timed doors. And like when I do that, I search the entire world, but I skip killing all enemies, just so that I can find all of the potential power upgrades, the brutality and tactics upgrades, and then also finding any weapons and elites to kill and stuff like that. Now, I get bored of that strategy, and that's why I did not use that strategy on this run. I don't necessarily think that one strategy is stronger than the other. You do get a little bit, the rewards for getting those timed doors are so minor. It's usually only one point upgrade for the first one. I think you get 2 for the second, and then 2 for the third time door that you get through. And just that's just such a minor upgrade at that point in the game that I don't necessarily think it's worth it, or it's required to get that, because you take more risks by running through. And then, after doing, 10 runs where you're just skipping every enemy and not getting any kill, I get tremendously bored of that strategy. So that's a personal preference, really. So I wanted to talk about some of the other changes that came in the Foundry update, they changed how, oh well, obviously the mutation system, which I've talked about quite a bit already. I really like the mutation system. I think it allows you to create some builds that otherwise would not have been effective at all. This double bow build, it's just so, like, bows and arrows I found terrible before this build, but now with just with these extra little perks, they and there's no trade-off to them, you know, like there's no, wow, I came closer to dying there than I would have liked. There is no downside to using any of the mutations, and I have to imagine that in future patches they're gonna balance that a little bit so that maybe you earn less cells or something like that, or you have to pay gold to use a mutation. I think that would be a really interesting trade-off, especially the paying gold to use the mutations. And you have to pay a little bit of gold to swap out mutations if you ended up choosing some that you don't like and your build changes or something like that. But it's a pretty minor cost, relatively speaking. So I have to imagine that with future patches they're going to balance that. The boss cell update to the game is fascinating. And it makes this game much more challenging for repeated playthroughs. So if you didn't know, when you kill the assassin for the first time in this after this Foundry update, I just dunked right down that tunnel there. Oh god, I hope the audio for my voice is being synced up with what I'm actually doing. When you kill the assassin for the first time, he will drop a cell or a rune. I forget what their exact words are for it. That you can then turn on for subsequent runs. That makes the game more difficult. And then when the assassin rune is turned on, you can then earn additional boss cells for killing the Watcher and the Incomplete One. And that cell makes it more difficult throughout the game. It puts enemies in new places. It makes the enemies hit harder. And it also, it enables you to get a boss cell from the Incomplete One. And also, it increases the level of the Foundry. And so they changed how weapon and Foundry upgrades work with this patch. So previously, after every single level, you could go ahead and upgrade any weapon that you want by putting cells into those weapons. Now, the Foundry is only available immediately after bosses, and the level to which you can upgrade any of the weapons has changed. So you can only upgrade each weapon once now, until you turn on a boss cell, which is different than it was previously, where you could upgrade any weapon multiple times. So, for example, here, I can't remember what I upgrade, if I upgrade anything, but I certainly have enough to upgrade some stuff. So, what I should have done is I should have used this as an opportunity. I think I upgraded 3 different things here. But you can use this as an opportunity to just get whatever weapon you want. It's basically a store. So the lightning bolt, which is probably the best weapon. Then I upgrade the hunter's longbow as well, which I should not have done. And because you only want one of those 2 weapons. So it says the next level of upgrade is unavailable until you turn on one of the boss cells. So if you want to upgrade your weapons even further, you're going to have to make the game more difficult and then complete a boss again to get all the way there. So I'm going to take the lightning bolt, I'm going to take my new upgraded ice bow, and probably just cash out or recycle those 2 the 2 other weapons that are just lying on the ground. And you can see The new upgraded weapon has the Lightning Bolt 4 Plus, indicating that it's stronger than normal. And then when you find these upgraded weapons in the environment, they will always be stronger than normal. So anyway, I don't think I have anything else to really say about the strategy. I've talked quite a bit about what I like about this build. The weaknesses are, you need a little bit of luck, but not too much luck. I mean, there's enough gear throughout the world that you don't really, you know, the roll of the dice, the RNGs, it's not going to hit you too hard. But anyway, thanks for watching, everybody. I hope you learned something, and game on.
Sim, é um músico. Sim.